welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and I am joined by the author of a book which is out in paperback this week. And I was just saying before we started recording that I had such a delightful time with this book. It is so funny and so sweet. So welcome to the show. Thank you for coming. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. My name is J.E. Thomas. At least I write under the name J.E. Thomas. Please feel free to call me Jan. My book is called Control Freaks, and it is about a STEAMS competition. That's not an error in saying it that way. It is STEM plus arts plus sports competition at Colorado's #1 school for unusually competitive kids. And it takes place in Denver. I think one of the questions that I get most often is this a real school? And is this a real competition? It's not a real school, but gosh, I think it would be great if it were. And it's not a real competition. But again, I think it would be great if it were.
Yeah, that school sounds phenomenal. It was like it would have been a dream space for me when I was in those middle school years myself. Could you talk a little bit about, before we get into the book itself, perhaps your journey to the book, how you got into writing, how you came to this novel? And I know from your website that libraries played a role. So if you could talk about that too, that would be great.
Yes, I was, and still am, a voracious reader. When I was in elementary school, my school would have a summer reading program, and we were supposed to read, 5 books or so during the summer, but I lived within walking distance of my local library. It's still there. It's Ford Warren Library in Denver, Colorado. And my mom would walk down with me. Actually, she would drive me, and I'll explain the reason for that. We would take a paper grocery bag with us, and I would fill it with books and then check them out, go home, and I would read them over the course of the week. So I pretty much finished the summer reading program within a few days, and I would do that every week during the summer. So libraries and librarians have just a real soft spot in my heart. I'm so grateful to that. And in terms of my journey as an author, I knew from a very young age, probably around 4 or 5, that I wanted to be a writer. I didn't have the word for author yet, but I wanted to tell stories. And my parents had a different plan for me. Thus, I went off to corporate America and pursued that track for my career. However, I continued to write for fun. And when I ended my career working for other people, I focused on writing as an author. Interestingly enough, I attended a school that was not unlike Benjamin Banneker College Prep in terms of dedicated teachers and wonderful resources. I attended that school for high school. And then I ended my professional PR and marketing career at that same school as an administrator. So it was just full circle, and then off I went to become an author. One other thing I'll mention is I think it's so important to note that people can have such a phenomenal impact on our lives and on children's lives. So my book is in part dedicated to my 9th grade English teacher who saw me and in all my adolescent glory, kind of flopping about, and recognized that writing was something I enjoyed. I had an opportunity to see her again when she was about 100 years old, I think, or possibly 101, before the paperback came out, when the hardback had just come out, to see her and thank her. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That is a really lovely full circle story. And I was going to ask about the dedication, because I think we all had a teacher like that who, or, if we are so lucky, we've all had a teacher who we carry with us through our lives like that. I was also curious that it's dedicated to Nichelle Nichols, who, as a Star Trek fan, yeah, she was really important to me. So, yeah, without getting too off course, could you talk a little bit about the inspiration that you found in her and in Star Trek, perhaps?
Hmm. Yes, absolutely. There is a character in the book whose name is Huey Linkmeyer, who has aspirations of being a magician, and but he has a lot of anxiety. And I was much the same way. I was pretty shy in high school and definitely in college. And I'm a Star Trek fan from way, way, way back. But I got a job in college writing for the school newspaper. And I was able to go to a Star Trek conference. I was going to interview the actors, and I was literally paralyzed. I couldn't move forward. I couldn't say anything. So I just hovered by the door like a statue. And Nichelle Nichols, the original Uhura, saw me and she came around and she said, "Don't stand in the back. Don't do that. Come in the front. Come with me." She took my arm. She brought me to the front of the room. I don't know that I was able to ask a question. I was just in awe, surrounded by it. I'm like, oh, my favorite actors ever. But it was that moment of being seen that had a huge impact on me.
Wow, that's an amazing story. That is, yeah, I just love the pairing also of a personal teacher with somebody who really took on teaching an entire generation as well. And
Mhm.
really, really lovely. Let's turn to Control Freaks now. I'd love if you could talk a little bit about crafting Frederick Douglass Zesmer. I love him. I love his point of view. So yeah, talk a little bit about him and his aspirations. Let's
Yeah, yeah, yes. So Doug wants to become the world's greatest inventor, and he knows exactly what his purpose in life is, which I could identify with. But his parents also, well, actually, his dad has a different perspective. His dad is a former wide receiver for the Denver Broncos. Hey, Broncos. And he wants Doug to play football. And so a big cornerstone of the book is who gets to decide what you do with your life? What if you know in your heart what you are supposed to do, but somebody else says you need to do something else? How is that resolved? How do you advocate for yourself? And how do you help others, in this case, his dad, understand that he really does have a plan?
I really loved the nuance with which that relationship is portrayed, and just in general, the depiction of a complicated family, a family with divorced parents and with remarriages and all of that. Because as a kid who was growing up in the 90s, going to school, and who had divorced parents myself, I did not see that sort of family relationship reflected in a lot of the books that were written for our age. And so it's really nice to see that now, and even that Frederick is not the only one, that he has other friends also who come from complicated families or blended families. And I think that's some really important visibility to see different sorts of families depicted.
Thank you. I agree. And I wanted to avoid some of the stereotypical tropes of, oh, here's a stepfather. The stepfather must be difficult or must not understand a child. And so in Frederick Douglass Desmer's case, his stepdad has been part of his life since he was 2. And one of his big tasks is to help his biological father understand that his stepdad is his dad also. And it is complicated. And I feel for his mom, who is between this and trying to figure out how do we do this in the best possible way. And his friend Huey, who has 6 steps based on the number of times his parents have been divorced. So yeah, families can be complicated.
Yeah. And it did capture that feel. I felt like with Huey having, oh gosh, like we used to visit 4 or 5 houses on Christmas. And I'm like, this is like being president. You're only in each place for 10 minutes before you move on.
Exactly. Exactly. Here's your turkey drumstick, and you move on to the
Yep.
like another one. Yay.
I also really appreciated the depiction of middle school life. It is a time period that if I'm being totally honest, I have tried not to think about all that much, but thinking about it was really helpful for me, because it's an age where you are in so many different transitions, right? You are transitioning between being a child and a teenager, between schools, perhaps between like friend groups as your groups get mixed up. So, yeah, could you talk a little bit about how you connected again with that period of life? Did you talk to middle schoolers? Did you troll your own memories? How did you because it just feels so real and lived in.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I think part of it was certainly working in a school for 6 years and just being surrounded by kids. I think authors tend to observe a lot. We just sort of blend into the wallpaper and watch. And so I was able to watch a lot of that. I will give credit to former writing instructor who said that authors tend to write to the emotional age at which they are stuck. And so apparently mine was 12. And so regressing back to that was not hard at all. I definitely feel as though that was hugely helpful. And then just watching kids trying to figure out their path.
Yeah, it's really lovely. And I think you don't only see it with our protagonists, there are a range of point of views that you get to experience parts of the story from. I was curious, in terms of the other characters who get point of view chapters, you get to see their outlook. Did you have a favorite to write for? And on the flip side, did you have a most challenging to write for?
I don't know that I had a favorite. Well, I suspect Doug because he was really the center of the novel. But the others, there are aspects of my personality in each one of them. And so I was able to find myself in there. I give Huey some of my own lived experience with being socially anxious. I could give Travis, the shark, some of my experience of being younger than my other classmates. And there were just elements of each one of them. I enjoyed Mrs. Jalil because she she was just overwhelmed by all of this energy swirling around, and also Principal Yi because I loved the fact that all he really wanted was to figure out a way to get kids to work together. It was such a heartfelt place, and he kind of forgot for a minute what happens if you bring out a huge trophy and you tell the most competitive kids in the state that they can win it. Then they really want to win, 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 no matter what.
Yeah. I really loved him too. He was also a fellow Trekkie among us. He has this.
Yes, right.
Yeah, I think what felt really real to me was that sometimes when you were reading stuff read for middle grade, the teachers can feel like caricatures or not like real people because you want to make the kids laugh by making fun of their teachers, and that feels like transgressive in some ways, I think. But like they felt like real people to me, like even when they were overwhelmed or silly or, like they felt like teachers that I had known and encountered.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I again give credit to working in a school and being surrounded by teachers who were so human, which is great since they were human beings, but they tried so hard and they worked so hard that I wanted to also pay tribute to them, to let them know I saw you. I saw you go that extra mile for that kid, and that kid may never remember, but someone saw what you did.
Yeah, it's very, I think, empathetic to both the students and the teachers, which feels.
Thank you. And hopefully the parents also. So
Yeah, yeah. And I think, especially because the book could have very easily, I think, totally demonized Doug's father. I feel like I called him Frederick before, like I was, calling his name off the roll call. But Doug, I mean, he could have easily been like a very unidimensional sort of antagonist. And I don't even think it really, like, it's more nuanced than that, too, I think. And it's good, I think, to remind children who are in complicated families like this that their parents are also human. Yeah.
mhm. Yes, and they're trying their best also. And if you have step siblings as well, it's poor Doug, he's trying to forge a relationship with his step brother, and that's not easy. So it's a family. And that I think is one of the big takeaways of this book. There's a neighbor next to Doug's family, Mr. Cohen, who was alone during COVID. And Doug's parents, well, stepdad and mom said, there's no way we're leaving this man alone in his house. And so they brought him in and he stayed with them. And just those little acts of being a good human, I think they're good to see. They're definitely good to see.
Yeah, I really felt like it had a lot of really lovely things, I think, to say about collaboration, which now that you were talking before, saying it does seem like it's a really hard challenge to get these highly competitive children to collaborate on something. And with such a difficult requirements, the part that
Yes.
really got me was when they had to include a kid from each grade. And I
Yes.
thought about just how set in stone those middle school hierarchies seemed, like everybody has their place and, you better stay in that place. And so it is a really hard, a hard assignment that the principal gave them.
Exactly. When you think about an eighth grader needing to partner with a sixth grader, the gap seems so wide, just so wide. And to be a seventh grader and not know which way do you go? Do you skew towards your sixth grade self? Do you think about yourself as an eighth grader? It's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it really captured to me how high the stakes can seem at that phase of life because, as I said before, like you're no longer a kid. And so you are sort of posturing as somebody who is a little bit older than perhaps you are. And yeah, to have to come to terms with your goals and your dreams and how they intersect with reality and with the people around you and how to manage conflict and communication. Like all these things are such good lessons for that age group. So,
Thank you.
well,
Thank you. It really is a challenge, I think, when you are 11 or you're 12 and you are, like you said, growing and learning and expanding your horizons. But people will also ask you, what are you going to do with your life? And in some cases, you don't know, but it's zero-sum game sometimes when you get that question.
and I imagine that pressure has sort of only gotten more heightened for kids as things have gone on because I just feel like with the growth of standardized testing and with college prep starting so early, sometimes
Yes.
that we are oftentimes, encouraging children to put these very high pressure on themselves. So, yeah.
Exactly. When you need to apply for preschool. And it is funny. I heard some sixth graders talk about their college resume. And it's a lot. It's a lot to try to figure out when, a few years ago, you were making mud pies and you thought that's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, it's really lovely. Do you think this is an age group that you will write for again? Do you want to stay sort of with this age set? What do you like? What's on your horizon?
So my second book was just announced. It should come out next spring. It's called The AI Incident, and it will be another middle grade book. So yes, I have not grown beyond my 12-year-old self yet.
Oh, well, you were extremely eloquent at 12, if this, if this is true. So you're good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us and sharing this book. I really enjoyed it. I'm very excited to share it with our middle school patrons.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you again for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure.
You're very welcome. Okay, listeners, it's now your turn. Please check out Control Freaks. It's already out there, but by the time you hear this, it will be in paperback as well. So go to your favorite independent bookstore, library, wherever you like to go for your books. All right, it is now time to close this chapter. Goodbye.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.